Nice. Oh, thank you. I'm good. I've got my throat coat. I'm good. Thank you. You're nice. Fran, it's so great. Men almost never do that. I know. I wish they would, but they don't. But that's right. That's right. No, thank you. All right. Come on back. Whew. All right, good. So, good. Okay, ready for a little clap action? Okay. Any comments or questions about self-compassion in particular, or linking in general? Or soon anything else? Okay, right there, maybe the microphone? Good, please.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could speak to whether or not you think that hypnosis has a place with linking with positive and negative.
Yeah. So what about hypnosis with linking? Or more generally, in just the first three steps of, internalizing some useful experience. I think of hypnosis first, people use the word a little differently. Sometimes they use it in the more narrow, kind of original sense of a kind of trance state. Other people use it, particularly recently, in a looser, broader way. I'm fine both ways. I'm just acknowledging what we mean by the word. I think that a lot of hypnotic procedures, as well as many other structured forms of personal growth or healing, in both kind of Western psychological traditions, as well as the great wisdom or cultural traditions around the world, a lot of those things that work naturally follow that kind of heal structure, right? In other words, because it's a universal two-stage process of learning or growth or change, where we need to have some kind of beneficial experience, and then we do various things to encode and consolidate and reconsolidate it. Maybe also including, as in, let's say, hypnotic procedure, or other variations like EMDR or tapping or other procedures that associate something negative to something positive. And yeah, when people are in a particularly receptive place, whether it's hypnosis or a guided practice, say in here, or in a being in wilderness in certain settings, or in a, let's say, going to synagogue, a particular sacred setting, or having a very real conversation with a dear friend, perhaps involving, it's been known to be very useful psychedelics of one kind or another, skillful means. Often people will have powerful experiences. So I think myself quite pragmatically about what's useful for this particular person, this particular issue at this particular time, and balancing costs and benefits and risks, frankly. So I'm fine with these kind of procedures being used in hypnosis, and I think those forms of really stilling the mind and quieting it, including really, really deep contemplative practice of one kind or another, those too are fantastic opportunities for lasting transformation. That's the really interesting thing we're playing with here, which goes back to the question of how do we receive beneficial experiences without getting attached to them. We are really playing with transient experiences that we're encouraging to have some kind of lasting value, right? For our own sake and that of other people. So yeah, I'm for it. Okay, a couple others? Great. Steve?
Like many others, like my clients, certainly when I am already in a good state, it's easy to remember to get into a good state. When I'm not in a good state, I can't even remember what a good state looks like.
I'm not quite hearing you.
Okay.
So,
when I'm in a good state, it's easy to remember to get into a good state.
Yeah.
When I'm in a bad state or a less resourceful state, I can't even remember what it looks like and feels like. I have, it's almost a joke. The way I know that I need to shift my state is I'll go outside, I'll look around, and I'll go, just a bunch of trees. Like I won't see the beauty in nature. I'm shut down to that. So I know I'm not alone in this. The question is, what is your favorite trim tab or
What is my
way
favorite
to
trim tab? Okay.
to remind oneself of the possibility, because it seems elusive when you can't, when you're in a negative state, it is elusive to even remember that good states are possible.
There's a lot of depth in that question. So just to kind of repeat it, make sure I got it. When we're in a beneficial state of mind already, in the body, in our emotions, our motivations, how we see things, it's easy to access. But when it's not there, it can feel like a distant memory, or not even that. We can't even access it. What to do about that? So a couple things. First, to go back to this cycle here, through repeatedly registering, opening up a slot in the inner motherboard, and sticking that module in, so that it's really there, and rooting it again and again and again, establishing it in there. Then more and more, it naturally activates, and also more and more, we can reach down into ourselves, as it were, and call it up. So there's a natural process of learning. That's what learning is. We start out, we can't do it at all. In the beginning, nothing came. Then we start being able to reach it, but it's not stable, it's not automatic. We have to be deliberate. There's this transition in learning from deliberate to automatic, right? And then over time, it increasingly just naturally activates. So that's one way to reflect on this process altogether, okay? The second thing is to know what you're trying to grow. Like I have found that often people think they are installing in themselves when they're actually not. They're just having one nice state after another. And you really see that even in professional or academic psychology. People talking about strengths development. They're not actually talking in the character strengths literature about developing strengths in the ordinary sense. They're talking about developing the use of their existing strengths. So, right, okay, good, that's good, but it doesn't mean you're actually growing, increasing the strength itself. How do I what?
How would you know if you're just doing that or installing?
Okay, so how would you know? So, is the strength getting bigger? Is it is it becoming more? Are you becoming, let's say, the strength of gratitude or the strength of compassion? Are you developing trait compassion or trait mindfulness, right? So first, check yourself. Am I actually internalizing? Am I actually capturing, I'll do it like this, all right? So in other words, I'm probably going to do this badly. I've never drawn this picture. I don't know. So like time one, right? Time one, and then we have time two. Okay? So here we are. We're having a good experience of some kind. And then at time two, are we any more that way? Are we any more compassionate? Are we any more mindful? Are we any more grateful, resilient, gritty, securely attached, fill in the blank, right? There's no delta. So this is getting better. This is time, right? So this is gain. Okay, right? On the other hand, maybe we actually learn something, okay, at time two. This is the, sometimes called delta, the change, right? The change. Think of it in terms of interest rate on your retirement account. Now I've got your attention, right? Right? In other words, what's the gain over time between 1%, 4%, 6% maybe, or something like that, see? So what's your average rate of gain from your beneficial experiences? And how can you steepen your average gain rate? Now, on any given day, if you move from, if you could imagine it numerically, from 5% to 6%, on any given day, that difference isn't that great. But you accumulate that little difference day after day after day after day after day, 365 days a year, 20,000 days in your life or more, some number like that. Woo! That makes a big difference between being here at the end of the year or life or here. Those little differences really add up over time. So paying attention to that. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I've seen a lot with people is they don't know what they're trying to grow. They're not specific. It's fuzzy. Oh yeah, I just want to be more, like that. That's not very specific, is it? Like, what are you trying to actually grow? And then really, really going after it, because that is the trait you're trying to develop so that it's much more active when you really need it later. So know what you're trying to develop. That's been really useful for me. What's on your short list? 1 or 2 or 3 things, And if all else fails, becoming more loving is the universal medicine. It doesn't mean becoming a chump. It means becoming, more loving. All right? That part. And then the last thing I would just say about that, for myself as a reminder, there's this line, the most important thing to remember is to remember the most important thing. And I do little things, like I put up little stickies around myself. I try to help myself. Also, my first honest answer, Steve, to your question was humility. It's the humility of receptivity. Is to realize that, wow, we need to be not such big shots or masters, mistresses, as it were, of the universe. And instead realize, wow, we need to receive. We need to take in. We need to kind of like show up at life and have the humility of receptivity, a kind of modesty that realizes that we rest very dependently on a vast network of causes, and we really need to receive to grow the good inside ourselves. So part of my own answer about that, when I feel like I'm master of the universe, top dog, I don't need to learn anything, right? But on the other hand, if you feel like, whoa, I'm vulnerable, life's difficult, there's an inherent frailty in every body, in every being. The center doesn't always hold. Things do sometimes fall apart. At the end of the day, there you are, on a, may it be so good that you lie there in your bed in your final day. What are you left with inside to draw upon in those difficult hours, perhaps, in those final hours, minimally? So for me, there's a kind of humility to this as well, to really receive into yourself things that matter the most. That motivates me. Okay. So, maybe one more person, and then I want to move on to resources for safety. Oh, great. If you're willing, right up here in the front row, if you put your hand up, she'll find you, if you don't mind. Right here. Great. Good. Thank you. Also, those checklists, that helps. That helps remind you. Those checklists at the end of each class, that helps you too. Keep taking in the good. Great.
So I wanted to ask you for any comments on the second part of Steve's question, which, as I understood, was, and I really wanted to hear that. As I understood the question, the second part of what he asked, it was, when you're in a negative state, or when he is in one, when I am in one, it is very elusive to...
Yes.
Yeah. So any comments on that?
Well, my first comment is, thanks for reminding me about the second part of the question.
I was waiting and waiting. Thank you for addressing that. Thank you.
That's good. Well, if I get it right, first, most opportunities for learning and growth, that's our focus, cultivation, right, have to do with beneficial experiences we're already having. Okay? First point. Second point, when we're in let's say a bad place, or including kind of an ordinary, frazzled, distracted, okay, but not great place. And we're trying to be happy, or we're trying to be grateful, or we're trying to find kindness or something inside, and it's not there. We cannot get that song playing, right? Okay. My long answer was, you grow the trait inside, and okay, great. But let's say whatever it is, here you are right now, all right? And the first thing I would say for myself is I try to sense down to what's really going on here. Like, what am I really bothered by? You know, in a very kind of, often it's just one word or one feeling. It's pretty primal, it's pretty core. I'm just tired, you know. I'm like, my dad grew up on a ranch. He talked about a saying about horses at the end of a long day, not treated well: rid hard and put up wet. Where you feel like that, you know, not wiped down, not cared for, not fed, you know, left with the, just, no. And you can feel that way yourself sometimes. So, okay, I really need to reset, reboot, just to my kind of, my inner lizard, mouse, and monkey. I got to take care of them a little bit. So or maybe there's some way I felt hurt, I felt mistreated, I felt wronged. I'm still with that thing that happened a few hours ago or first thing this morning. I'm feeling wronged by it. So try to get down to what that is. Then often when you know what that is, when you note it, then you let yourself feel it, you be with it, and then you help yourself start to let go of it, release it, encourage it gently, often in kind of waves to move on, and then gradually orient toward what would be an appropriate replacement to it. Right? Does that make sense? So you're tuned into the crud and the deeper level of it, not the superficial level of it, but the deeper level of it. That. And then the last thing I would just say about this is this idea of low-hanging fruit. In other words, sometimes, you know, like things have happened and you're trying to mobilize universal unconditional love for all beings, every asshole included. And you know, like, I know I should, but forget about it. It's out of reach. It's not there. It's at the top of the tree, and I can't reach that high right now. You know what I mean? So, but what I can do, let's say, is that I can notice that this other person that I'm close to, or I know, or I can bring to mind, is a decent person, a good person, and I appreciate that person. That person's given to me. I've gained from that person, you know, and I can start there. Or maybe I can start with some ordinary, wholesome moment of turning on some music on my playlist and starting to settle down as I listen to it. I'm activating a beneficial state that's within reach. Or maybe I get something to eat. Or I do one of my favorite things, you know, read while I'm peeing. You know, so I admit it. Okay, too much information. But there you have it. I read like a paragraph at a time, a page at a time. I can work my way through a novel pretty, you know, eventually. Okay, too much information, but we all have our ways. Whatever your ways are. Chocolate, you know, maybe one of those ways. Low-hanging fruit. What can you find? Maybe you turn to a favorite poem. Literally, you reread that poem. Or like, yeah, and something that brings you back again. So low-hanging fruit. Really, really important. Low-hanging fruit. And then the last thing I'll say about this, and we'll keep going with another practice here, building resources around safety, has to do with a comment that Gina brought up at the break. In that, related to this idea of what's the heart of the matter, of what's upsetting me or rattling me when I'm rattled or agitated or just restless or jumpy or kind of blue or I feel weighted down or, you know. The heart of the matter, which is where the action is and where the opportunity is with kind of the emotional, somatic core of experience. And for example, let's say various things have happened, you know, they said this, I said that, and we're kind of up here at this level, the thought track, the word track. And thinking that through a little bit is useful. But where often the action is, going back to that point I was making about learning from hippocampus to cortex, from particular to general, is to get down to the general residue of that irritating, stressful, worrying, hurtful experience. And often that residue is the residue of many such types of experiences. It has a kind of generality to it, even reaching down to when we first started to have those kinds of experiences, probably when we were younger So I'm trying to get to the heart of the matter. So in effect, I'm using, to mix my metaphors, this current upsetting, irritating experience to help me identify the leaf of the log of the core of the residue of the upset, the core of the material. And then I access that core. Oh, what are the earlier similar versions of that? What's the essence there in the body? What's the oh so familiar feeling of slumping, collapsing inside, right? You try to get to that. And then, of course, you need to resource yourself through things like some mindfulness training, compassion for yourself, insight, understanding why you're doing it, you know, to tolerate, also distress tolerance, so you can tolerate the unpleasantness or pain of what you're accessing. But you get to that core, that's where the action is. And then you take in resources matched to that core, related to that core. And as you do that, more and more, you start really, really clearing it out. And so the details don't matter that much. What matters is the kind of like the bottom line impact, or what is the generalized or indexed across all similar episodes. That's the common factor, the common essence of each one of those that's in you here today. And then that's what you can deal with.
And is that where mindfulness of the body and felt sense, just staying with the felt visceral sense, that's kind of perhaps the key?
Yeah,
of what
that
you're
really
talking about?
helps. And mindfulness training, you know, that helps us develop much more of that felt sense of the body is really useful. Mindfulness itself, as a kind of sustained present moment awareness, is in a sense neutral. It itself witnesses. And often the witnessing alone can help the release. And that's great. But on the other hand, if I could draw on this as a metaphor, if nothing else, it's the noble eightfold path, not the noble onefold path. In other words, mindfulness is not enough. It's not the entirety of the path in really any tradition. So alongside that mindfulness can be other things as well, like compassion for what we're aware of, or insight or understanding into why we're doing this, or after we've been with it for a while, we understand that it's helpful to kind of encourage it to keep on going. It's sort of like when the in-laws come over for dinner, you know? Well, you've got a long drive ahead of you, right? You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, it's like, encouraging them out the door, and then what do you replace them with? You know, like, whoa, good people, but let's watch The Good Wife, or something like that. Background replay. Okay, you see what I'm saying, more or less. All right, great. Yeah. Okay, and I think fundamentally, just my last suggestion, it's up to you entirely, just offered to you, is you could see it, me kind of embodying it or representing it, a certain quality of playfulness and resourcefulness. We can get really serious about this stuff, and also we can get kind of rigid, dogmatic, or programmatic about it. And I think it's appropriate to have a playfulness and not taking oneself too seriously, realizing you get a lot of cracks at it, keep on going, and meanwhile, what's that big word again? Meanwhile, enjoy the journey. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Happy to talk with you later. I really got to keep going. But definitely come up and talk with me, please. Okay? All right. So, protection. I want to talk a bit about fear, and then slide into protection, and end at 9 o'clock. All right? All right. Okay. So you're first on my list. You there. You're first on my list for the next one. In a good way. It's a good list. Okay? All right, good. So I want to talk a bit about fear. Before I do that, this slide really touched me at the end of the self-compassion practice. Often we feel like we've got to be perfect somehow to deserve self-compassion. But as Leonard Cohen, who I also think deserves a Nobel Prize, really amazing, maybe more so, who knows? I like Dylan, I do like Dylan. Says, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's how the light gets in. We're all cracked. It's often through our cracks that the light shines most. Right? Okay. So, fear. Fear is arguably the first emotion that evolved. Or alongside fear, disgust. two primal emotions, the neural apparatus for which, deep in the brainstem, we share with very, very primitive creatures today, from whom our evolutionary line diverged several 100 million years ago. Fear or similar reactions to the unpleasant. They're very primal. It's very fundamental. There is a place for fear. We want to see real threats. Absolutely true. On the other hand, we're very vulnerable, as you can see scaled up at the societal level to appeals to fear. You can see it down at a local level, families, grade school yards, playgrounds, or couples. Or the ways in which internally, as soon as something comes up inside you that feels at all alarming, it really grabs us. So it's very useful to be extremely mindful of anxiety, including very subtle trickles of apprehension, vigilance, scanning, right? Let alone more of a sense of anxiety, fearfulness, even panic or terror, right? Very aware of fear can be very, very helpful. Now, as we evolved, or as our ancestors evolved, in a sense they could make two kinds of mistakes. One mistake is thinking there's a tiger in the bushes, but there really is nothing there. That's one kind of mistake. The second kind of mistake is to think everything's fine, feeling groovy, but there's a tiger there in the bushes, about to jump out and eat you. What's the cost of the first mistake? Needless anxiety, okay? What's the cost of the second mistake? No more mistakes forever. So we are designed to make the first mistake hundreds of times over to avoid making the second mistake even once. And that's our universal blueprint, basically. Then you have people who are more tilted just by temperament toward anxiety. They have more of an anxious, avoidant, prevention orientation. And then you have life experiences, which can really land on people and tilt them toward very understandable anxiety or learned reactions that are fearful, traumatized even. And then also you can imagine people in situations where it makes sense to be scared. If you're not scared, you're not paying attention. Okay, that's true. On the other hand, I think it's generally true that most people, me included, tend to overestimate threats. There are certain exceptions. Our son did not sufficiently estimate the threat of not turning in a form to the registrar at UC Berkeley, and he had to go to and pay for an extra semester of college. All right? So, and I think it's easy to miss long-term diffuse threats like the impact of dumping, I forget the number, millions of tons a day of carbon into the air that just stays there, eventually warming up the planet. Nobody doubts that basic science. But on the whole, people too tend to overestimate threats and often underestimate resources and opportunities. The takeaway from that I think of as paper tiger paranoia. So for me, the sweet spot is to see clearly. See the real tigers, see the real threats, but not overestimate, the harms that might be coming one's way. So what do we do about that? One of the wonderful resources, I think, to bring to mind is a very ancient resource of feeling protected. Secure base. What's the first rule of warfare according to Baron von Clausewitz? Secure a base of operations. What does attachment theory teach us about young children being able to explore, to go out, to venture? They need to do so from a secure base of an internalized sense of secure attachment. Right? That's what promotes exploration and going out there. So in a moment, we'll do a practice on feeling protected, and we've also done other practices before as a specific resource for safety, feeling all right now. And in this fourth class or part of this overall training, we'll get into how to handle threats in a responsive green zone way, from a place of calm strength and capability, rather than being captured by or invaded by fear or anger or helplessness. That's kind of a preview of what we're going to be getting into here. Okay? In particular, I'd like to explore now a sense of feeling protected. And one way to do this, which is also appropriate given that it's, we're moving into the evening, it's nice to do things that help bring some aliveness. In a moment, I'll suggest for about, about a 5 to 10 minute period, we'll do a practice here, and you're very welcome to get up and move around. I suggest you stay in this room so you can hear me and explore helping yourself have and then install, enrich and absorb experiences of protection. Like, for example, it's really easy to notice that your chair, it's easy to overlook the fact that your chair has not collapsed beneath you, right? Because we don't notice it. It's ongoing. We habituate to it. Yet, it's protective, Thank you, gravity. Somebody said that yesterday. We're not all floating away. You can go over to the walls. You push the walls. Wow, good. I bet this is earthquake compliant. Thank you, State of California. Thank you, Unity of Marin, right? It's a sense of protection. You look around the room. These are people, if you started twitching, I see a nurse right now. I know there are physicians in the room. People would come forward for you. Boom. There's a larger network, not perfect, but really pretty good, of circles of protection around us. Call the paramedics, the hospital, the healthcare system, civil society, justice systems. These are versions of protection. To the extent you have any resources in your life, money, credit, friends, family, allies, people who come for you. What about the internalization of resources inside, such as personal practice that can protect you? Insight, the internalized sense of calm or capability or fundamental sense of, at peaceness, way down deep inside you. What are some of the resources you might have? So that's what we're going to be exploring in this practice. Okay? Great. So, and if you start getting sleepy, it's especially a good idea to, it's no trapdoor, it's not thin ice. Like we're surrounded by opportunities to feel, for example, protected, but we hardly even notice them. Like just think about, driving along, no blowouts, no flat tires. I'm not trying to panic you, rolling along. Engine block, not bursting into flames. All right, All right, protected. Okay, ready to do it? And just feel free to have some fun, but see if you can feel protected. Clothing, protected. I have a shell, for going outdoors. I feel really good in my shell. Gore-Tex, high quality. I could survive nuclear war. Not really, but, strong. Okay, here we go. So bring to mind, eyes open or closed, some various opportunities to feel protected. And try to access an experience of protection. There I'm bringing up to mind, since it's raining these days, an umbrella. I brought my umbrella. It protects me, right? I just saw a friend of mine. I know my friend will come and protect me. So think of one or more things that rationally are protective. You're not thinking of perfect protection. Things can happen, but a lot of protection. And then helping yourself turn the recognition of a lot of protection into a feeling of being relatively safe. It's very primal to feel protected. It's very scary to feel exposed. So you can also do some linking with this. There may have been times in your life when you were invaded, not protected. In ways subtle, perhaps. I had quite intrusive parents. Other grosser forms of invasion, assault, not getting hijacked by the negative, but you can explore linking around protection by being aware of how today at least you are protected in many ways, at least in this moment. More protected today, more resourced, more shielded. You can even imagine a force field around you. Shields up, Scotty. That can help you feel protected alongside those previous life experiences of being invaded or not so protected. If feelings come up today of not being protected, it's all right. Or if there's a sense of how you are vulnerable these days, being aware of that, but also bringing attention back to how you actually are protected. Like for example, maybe when you were younger, other people did not stand with you. They didn't recognize what was happening, or it just wasn't the situation, or that's not what kids tend to do. But if it's true today that you have more people in your life who would stand with you or for you in various ways, even if not perfectly, that's true if it's true today. Giving yourself a legitimate opportunity to feel more allied with, more stood with, in solidarity in some sense today, compared to, as you link if you do, feelings off to the side of not having people stand with you when you were young. Fundamentally, you're helping yourself feel safer, as you reasonably can feel safer through feeling more protected. Another prompt, possibility, is to reflect on how qualities inside you can serve to protect you. Like the results of hard lessons about certain kinds of people that, you'll never let yourself be mistreated by again. That's protective. Or your willingness today, or your capacity to speak up for yourself that has grown over time. Or to reach out for support, allies. Or the much greater ability you have today than when you were much younger to see through BS. Or people kind of running some number on you for their own purposes. Your own fortitude, your own grit protects you from being really invaded potentially by negative things. Just being aware of these different things that could protect you, helping yourself have the core experience we're going after of feeling more and more protected, and especially safer and safer. With needless anxiety, needless guarding, needless vigilance, needless fearfulness falling away. So you're receiving into yourself, growing sense of safety, which might have qualities of calming, might have qualities of relief or reassurance. You know, it can help to recognize you can still see threats, you can still be vigilant, while also feeling reasonably safe deep down inside. And then let's segue slightly into a related practice of feeling basically all right now. And we'll just do this for a couple more minutes. There's a lot of overlap between feeling safe and feeling all right. So if you have an opportunity right now to register yet again this fundamental sense of bodily all rightness. We all are a bunch of scared monkeys, afraid of threats to survival. And it can be deeply useful to register as animals that evolved to be eaten much more than we evolved to eat others, that we're actually alive and okay right now. Maybe in the future something might happen, but now, continuously now, you're basically all right. Orienting to that experience, opening to it, seeing the truth of it, falling open into all rightness. Knowing what it feels like in your body to recognize that you're actually all right. Okay, starting to come back. It can help to differentiate different experiences, like feeling protected, distinct from feeling safe, distinct from feeling all right. They overlap, but to integrate, first we have to differentiate things into their elements, knowing what different songs are like in your mind. Okay, so you did that practice. And now I'd like to segue in a moment to doing something with a partner where basically, if you're into it, reflect with your partner out loud. A's mainly talk, B's mainly listen. And when you're talking, talk about whatever would be useful for you to talk about how you are overly affected by anxiety or inhibition or playing smaller than you really need to play in life. All right? Not beating yourself up, kind of a fearless searching inventory, as it were, just seeing clearly, not tipping the other way. Two kinds of mistakes. You want to make sure you keep recognizing the real tigers. But how have you been affected by or worrying too much about certain things? Or allowing ongoing chronic worry that's adding no value, invading you? We can still track threats without being preoccupied and ruminating about or having our well-being dragged down by unnecessary generalized anxiety, right? So that's the inquiry here. How might you be overestimating threats, underestimating resources and opportunities, and having lived in a way, in too fearful a way? Maybe with regard to a particular person in your life, or a particular kind of situation in your life, or a particular group of people in your life. Okay? And you might even imagine to yourself, what would it be like to walk across a room without one atom of fearfulness, one trickle of anxiety, or to enter into an interaction with another person without any quality of fearfulness? Appropriate reading of the situation, appropriate caution, all right, but without being preoccupied with fear or in unnecessary inhibition and contraction. That's the topic. You understand the topic? Okay? I think this is one of the big topics in life. All right? Especially in a culture that bombards us. Watch a TV show. It's like bombs are going off in every city, every episode. Like, what? Okay, ready? All right, find a partner. This will be the last thing we do tonight, then we'll come back, then we'll end. All right? Find a partner. It'll be about 5 minutes each. All right, pick an A and a B. Raise your hand if you want a partner. Look for a hand. Look, keep your head turning. Look for a partner. Don't be shy. Find a partner. Okay, good. All right, everybody have a partner? Talk softly if you don't mind. So you understand the topic, right? Talk about what would be useful for you to recognize. In effect, I'm asking you to recognize the good news. How could you afford to be less worried? Right? How could you afford to be less inhibited, less vigilant, less fearful, less apprehensive, less burdened by the residues of past fearful experiences? Got it? You got it. Okay, A's begin. 5 minutes. So hello there, and first I want to say that you're hanging in there. That's really good. It's a lot of material. It's a long, long run. So the reflection here is, for you, how might you be able to, in a sense, lay down your burden of unnecessary fear, anxiety, contraction, tension, inhibition, vigilance, mistrust? How might you be able, reasonably, legitimately, to lay some of that down? So you might start by getting a sense of, how could I release unnecessary bracing or guarding in my own body? You know, as we go through life, we often put on a suit of armor, or we carry a shield in front of us. And in tension, you know, the shoulders rise, the head turns back, you know, we look at people in a certain way. What would it be like, to the extent you could authentically, reasonably afford to do it, to let it go? To lower that guard. To relax some of that armoring against life that's needless. Also, you might reflect on your thought processes. pick a typical situation or a relationship perhaps in which your belief system tends to be tilted toward overestimating the seriousness or of a bad event or the likelihood of a bad event. Oftentimes we are appraising situations or we're making predictions related to certain things that have to do with a combination of, in our mind, the chances, the odds of the bad event, and then second, the harm, the consequences of the bad event. And very often people overestimate the odds and they overestimate the consequences. How might you be doing that? Related to things at work, or in your personal life, or in relationships with other people. And if you like, as you reflect here, you can maybe write some things down, flagging particular situations or writing out a kind of good advice for yourself about not holding on to beliefs that are overly catastrophizing or generalizing, overestimating of bad things that might happen. So I'm going to give a time signal in a moment, and I'll be coming back to you. "30 seconds, starting to wrap it up. 30 seconds. Finishing up, and then switching roles. Okay, B's your turn. What burdens could you lay down? What's the good news? B's begin. So another reflection here is to bring to mind maybe a dream or an ambition or a goal that you've had, some important purpose. Maybe swinging out in business or in your career or work in a new way. Maybe trying something different in terms of how you operate in life, some form of self-expression, taking up a musical instrument again, or starting that blog, or starting that novel, or another kind of book, or maybe going back to school to get some additional training, some ambition or dream you've had. And then asking yourself, have I been overestimating the difficulties associated with that goal or dream or ambition? And in particular, have I been overestimating those difficulties or expected, anticipated costs alongside underestimating, maybe, the actual benefits that would accrue to me and perhaps others, accumulating over time, even compounding exponentially over time, from stepping up and stepping out and living larger, daring more greatly, as Brene Brown would put it. Is there anything like that in your life that's worth considering here? If things come up for you like criticizing yourself or feeling
disappointed in yourself, that time has gone by, that you haven't acted, it's okay to notice that. Maybe there's a little bit of usefulness in it, that it might, fuel you or arm you or encourage you to go forward more, to bet more on yourself in terms of your dreams. But mostly let that part go and focus on the future. That's where you have, influence. That's where you can make things happen. What's the future that you can create for yourself? If you were less afflicted by, perhaps, weights or clouds of needless anxiety. A related question is, okay, let's suppose that your concerns are real and they're true, they're accurate. They're an accurate appraisal of risks, let's say. Okay, what could you do to manage those risks? Very often, people overestimate risks. And second, even if they estimate the risks accurately, they just stop there. Oh, a risk. Oh, they may not like it if I say that. Oh, my boss may disagree. Oh, that business project might fail. Oh, I might go to that school and get nothing from it. Oh, okay. Acknowledged. Not defended against, not minimized. Okay. How might you cope with it? How might you build up resources of various kinds to reduce the likelihood of that bad event? Or build up ways to manage its effects on you? Or how might you build up a capacity to live with the fact that anyone who engages life in a full way is going to do things that don't turn out and might even backfire? If you're not having some failures, you probably are not dreaming big enough. So you might be able to take that in. So the question is, how could you cope? How could you manage these risks, reducing them, or dealing with them if they come true? And then most fundamentally, as I finish up here, and it's a very powerful question, if you imagine yourself toward the very end of your life, imagining that you're comfortable, your mind's intact, you're sitting on the porch, you're 80, 90, 100, you're looking back on your life, what will you wish then that you had done now? Whatever is the past, but in the time that remains between now and the view from the porch, what will you be glad that you will have done? And can you do more and more of that and be more and more of that from now on? Good. And now I'm going to switch back to the group. Okay. All right, 30 seconds. Finishing up.
Coming back, coming back. All right, come on back. Okay. That's great. Okay, great. Good. Well, we're finishing up with this section, and we still have some more good things to explore related to our needs for safety and managing, sense of pain or threat from the green zone rather than getting reactive by it. And so that was a lot of material we covered today. Hopefully that was useful for you to flag this notion of lay it down. You know, can you lay that guarding or bracing in your body down if you don't need it? Can you lay down that mistrust? Can you just lay it down and be willing to see clearly with neither trust nor mistrust? Can you do that? One of the questions that I left people with when I was doing the little thing with the camera, such an interesting experience, you know, to do that. Talk about object permanence, you know, in psychology, where you keep in mind the other being there, you know, in a sustained way. You know, if you imagine what I call sometimes the view from the porch, there you are, let's say, toward the end of your life, imagining that you're comfortable, your mind's intact, 80, 90, 100 years old. My dad passed away just a couple weeks shy of his 97th birthday. So I'm going for 97. Actually, I'm going for 108. Seems like a nice, auspicious age. But anyway, who knows, longer. Anyway, the view from the porch. You might ask yourself, particularly related to this topic of irrational fear, irrational inhibition, irrational ducking down, irrational overestimating of risks, right? Irrational not mobilizing resources to deal with risks in practical, legitimate, reasonable ways. All right? So in this context, the view from the porch, it's kind of an interesting exercise if you've never done it. Imagining yourself there, sitting on the porch in your rocker or whatever, looking back on your life, looking back to who you are now. Can't do anything about the past prior to today. Who you are now in the time that is left, right? In the time that is left, the view from the porch, what will you, in the future you, looking back from the porch, be glad that you have done from today onward in terms of saying no to needless fear? I will not be cowed by you. I will not be bullied or intimidated or dominated by needless fear. I will claim courage, the root of which means heart. I will claim that for myself and my future self going forward into this life. What will you, looking back from the porch, be glad that you, from now on, will do in the days and years ahead? That's a good question. May you sleep well, dream well, and come back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. See you then. That's good. Woo! Woo! What? 9. 9 o'clock, right? 9 o'clock. Yeah, 9. Not 10. Right? 9. Right?
That's why I have 9.
9.
You know that I'm going to be a little late.
What?
I'll be a little late.
Oh, yeah.